Jenny's Fun Facts. We just want to take a moment to thank you so much, P Eats Meal Preps, for sponsoring our episodes. New menu out every Friday, ordered by Sunday, delivered fresh by Tuesday, and guess what? They deliver to all Montreal surrounding areas as well. Healthy, fresh, and delivered to your door for free. Add them and our podcast on Instagram at p.eats_P as in Peter, R-E-P as in Peter, S. Thanks, P Eats Meal Preps.
Welcome to Noon Hour Out of the Box, episode 39. Your constant love and support is so appreciated by the two of us. A huge thank you to Jenny DeHame, our producer who makes all this happen, and to my good friend, mentor, and co-host, Mr. Robert D'Alessio. How are you today?
Esther, I'm totally excited because we have a great guest joining us, and she's like from far, far away.
Yes, she is. She's going to be amazing and so interesting.
And today's subject is going to be mold illness. And Esther, I know a thing or two about mold illness for having had 3 campers in the same trailer park. And one of them, we're talking here like going back to 2012. And one of them was a 1972 Golden Falcon. And these things need a lot of maintenance, especially on the roof. You got to put some pitch, you got to put some caulking on there. And the people who had the previous owners, I guess, they had better things to do. So we buy the thing, and it had a smell in there, particular smell. It had dampness, and my throat was itchy. My eyes were burning. Well, next thing you know, we ripped off the whole roof. We opened it up like a sardine can. And what happened is that, oh my God, it was like so shocking. The 2x4s that were holding the ceiling up were actually so rotten that I took my screwdriver. I went through it like as if it was butter. So we ripped everything off. We renovated. 1 month into renovation, we fixed it up. The whole thing, whatever. It just kept my son kept getting sick all the time. I guess what happened is a lot of that water or a lot of the mold went through the walls. And it wasn't really ever, how can I say, we never really got rid of the stuff. So all that to say is that mold is a serious issue, and you can get really, really sick with this.
Absolutely. And apparently about 25% of people who are exposed to mold do get ill. So it is not, it's not where the 5 family members are living in a home that has mold and all 5 family members get ill. In fact, it's possible that only 1 or 2 members of the family will get it. So there is also a predisposition to it as well. And it's something that is not investigated enough. So there are a lot of allergy-like symptoms. There's neurological symptoms, some autoimmune disorders. I mean, a lot of these can be linked to mold and to what they refer to as mold illness, and that we don't even take that into consideration. So it's definitely an important subject and definitely needs to be discussed.
Most definitely. And we have a very, very interesting guest. She's got a lot to say.
Yes.
Esther, we're going to be bringing her on in a few minutes, but before that, we got to do something really important.
Always important, Robert. Go ahead.
Please stand by for program identification.
Today's guest is Katherine Rudman. Katherine is an Institute of Integrative Nutrition certified holistic health coach specializing in mold illness, having experienced her own 7-year journey with chronic illness. She is passionate about spreading awareness about the role mold can play in a wide range of chronic health conditions. She works with clients who have been diagnosed with mold illness or who suspect mold might be involved in their chronic conditions, providing them with the resources, guidance, and emotional support they need to begin to recover their health. In addition to her work as a coach, Katherine helps curate the Mold Channel for althealth.me, a new social media platform and marketplace for people who struggle with chronic health issues.
I think it's time to bring in our guest.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, here she is coming to you live from Albuquerque, New Mexico, only 531 miles from Roswell, also known as Area 51. Here's our amazing guest today, Miss Katie Rudman.
Hey.
Hello, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Katie, such a pleasure. We have so much to talk about. Katie, you're also a life coach right now, but you're a little bit new to this. So tell us how you got started with the whole thing.
That's a great question. So 6 months ago, I was incredibly ill and in a lot of physical pain. And really, I had no vision for being able to recover my health. And it was from that place where I had sort of a come to Jesus moment and realized that if I didn't connect to something greater than myself, if I had no purpose that was guiding my life, that recovery was going to be incredibly challenging for me. And that's when I decided to really dedicate my life and any time and health that I could get back to helping serve other people who are also dealing with these really debilitating conditions that are mold related.
So today's topic is mold illness. So Katie, what is mold illness?
That's a great question. So mold illness, which is also referred to as chronic inflammatory response syndrome, or CIRS, is a condition that results from exposure to biotoxins, usually from water damaged buildings. And the specific toxins that are produced by mold are called mycotoxins, and these are a type of biotoxin. So some of the people who have mold illness, they've had maybe one or a handful of short-term exposures to mold, or they might have had a long-term exposure. And what happens is that when people are exposed to these different biotoxins, it weakens your immune system and you become really vulnerable to all kinds of toxins and infections. And this creates a lot of inflammation in your body that then leads to all of the different chronic health issues that a lot of people with mold illness tend to deal with.
So what are some of the symptoms that people with mold illness commonly experience?
You know, they're really wide ranging. So that is one of the things that makes it really hard to pinpoint when people are seeking a diagnosis. You could have kind of more allergic reactions to mold and have a lot of sinus and respiratory issues. It might manifest as mental health symptoms. You could have extreme digestive dysfunction, irritable bowel syndrome. You might have pain in your body. So there are so many different ways that mold illness can manifest. And you might have a couple of symptoms, or you might have massive amounts of symptoms in different parts of your body.
Are there symptoms that are unique to mold illness?
Yes, there are some strange ones. One of them is static shocks. People with mold illness tend to get shocked all the time, no matter what they touch.
Wow.
And another one is rapid weight gain or weight loss. So someone might gain 20 pounds in 2 weeks after making no changes to their diet or lifestyle. That can be an indication that mold might be involved. And with mold illness, there can be sort of an ice pick pain that people experience. So it's a really intense sort of, focused type of pain. Sometimes vision problems are a big issue for mold patients, blurred vision. And then the other one that is important to look out for is there's a sense of sort of flatness or dullness that often sets in for people with mold illness. So if you're somebody who's really bubbly and you're a type A personality and you're always getting things done, and all of a sudden you have no motivation, there's really no emotional range that you can experience. This could potentially be related to mold or biotoxins. This is very common.
So, Katie, can you share with us exactly what your journey was like with your mold illness, and how is it that you discovered that you had mold illness?
So I dealt with mold illness for 7 years, and for 6 of those years I was undiagnosed. And I moved to Washington State when I was 24, which is a very damp, moldy place, with no awareness of what mold could do or the potential health implications. And I moved into a house that had a history of mold and remediation. And I signed the disclosure form, and I didn't think about it again until many years later. But it was in that house that I started experiencing a lot of symptoms. And it started gradually at first, and then it progressively worsened. And for me, the way that it manifested originally was memory loss. At times, I couldn't remember how to spell my last name or what my phone number was or the names of close friends. I developed a stutter. I had a hard time finding words, and I couldn't remember if I had said something, so I'd repeat myself again and again. And that was the beginning. And from there, it got a lot worse over time.
We have
So-
a question so we have a question from one of our audience members, Sarah C. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sarah has a question for you, Katie. What can you do to prevent mold illness, and how often should you go get your home evaluated?
That is a great question. So one of the things that you want to do is just to be aware of what's happening in your space that you're living in and the space that you're working in. And so testing, every several months is a great practice to have, just making every 6 months even, just to see what's happening in your space, because mold, it can grow very quickly. If you have water damage or flooding, then you want to get your house checked or your space checked after any kind of incident that involves water damage. But just as a maintenance thing, I think every 6 months, every year for the average person, if you have mold illness, it's great to do it as frequently as you can. There's a company that's based here in Albuquerque that I really love, and it's called Immunolytics, and they offer really affordable plate testing. You pay $33 per room, and they'll ship you the tests, and you can kind of get an idea of what's happening. So that's one really fantastic resource.
Oh, that's great to know. So if you are living with a chronic health condition, is mold exposure something you should be aware of?
I would say absolutely. It is involved in so many different chronic health conditions, and most people, they never know to look for it. And so if you're getting treated for something and your symptoms are not improving, you're doing everything that you possibly can to get better and you're not getting any traction, I think it's very valuable to investigate mold as a possible contributing factor to your illness. Because even if it doesn't cause the initial problems, as you become sicker, you can be more susceptible to mycotoxins, and it might become something that is involved over time.
So mold is sometimes called the great imitator. What are some of the conditions it can mimic or contribute to?
So mold can mimic or create symptoms of Alzheimer's. It can create symptoms of multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, ALS. It can cause heart issues, and it can be involved in so many different, it can be misdiagnosed as so many other conditions like chronic fatigue syndrome and irritable bowel syndrome. The list goes on and on and on. It can literally show up as almost any physical or psychiatric condition.
So why is it that in one family, one person can develop it while the other members don't? Are they in fact more predisposed to getting mold illness?
Yes, like you said in your intro, about 25% of the population, which I think is a pretty conservative estimate, has a genetic susceptibility to mold and biotoxins. And this is because that part of the population is a carrier for the HLA-DR gene. And that makes people have a lot of difficulty, first of all, being able to move biotoxins and different toxicants out of their body. And because of that, they will be the sort of canary in the coal mine, and they're going to be the person in a household who's incredibly reactive. But that doesn't mean that the other family members aren't being affected. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind, that some people are exhibiting classic CIRS symptoms, and other people might have a heart issue 10, 20 years down the line. So it's a great thing to just be aware of what's happening in your space so that you can prevent any of these illnesses from happening.
So, what are some of the obstacles mold patients face in getting diagnosed and treated?
One of the major obstacles that people face is that they're not believed.
Mhm.
They're often gaslighted by the medical community because people don't know to look for this. You know, a lot of healthcare professionals in the conventional community and alternative healthcare communities, they're not trained to look for mold illness or understand the role of toxicity in some of these symptoms that present. And because of that, a lot of people they'll show up to their healthcare practitioner. They will list off all of the different symptoms that they're experiencing. And because they're inconsistent symptoms, they're multi-system migrating issues that they're having, they will often get labeled as having as it being psychosomatic. And commonly people will be referred to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and they'll be prescribed antidepressants, even if most of the symptoms are physical in nature. So it's really hard for people to get a diagnosis, and it often takes people 10 years and
Wow.
an average of 10 years and $100,000 in
Oh,
personal investment to get a
wow.
diagnosis.
That's awful. But is there a connection between mold illness and mental illness?
Yes, there is a huge connection. And this is something that I feel so passionate about because this is not spoken about, but mold can cause symptoms of bipolar disorder. It can cause symptoms of schizophrenia, psychosis. It can cause panic disorders. It can cause crippling depression and anxiety. This is a factor that is incredibly important to look at if you have a diagnosis of any kind of mental health condition and you're wanting to explore this is a possibility. This is a very common cause of mental health problems. And a lot of people will experience something called mold rage, similarly to Lyme rage and thyroid rage, where they can't control their emotional reactions anymore. And so this is a hugely important topic. And I'm glad you brought it up.
So, what makes mold illness such an isolating condition?
Hmm.
It is an incredibly isolating condition for people because when they're seeking help at the beginning, when all of this stuff starts happening and they're beginning to get ill, they have hope, right? And they go to their doctor, they'll see 10, 20 doctors. And as time goes by, what typically happens, and this is a generalization, but what typically happens is that once all of your doctors start to doubt the validity of your illness, then your family and friends are, often are kind of also wondering, are you overreacting? Are you making some of this up? Is this as serious as you're making it out to be? And so there's this sense of not being able to trust the people that you go to seek help from and support. And then all of a sudden you can't confide in the people who are comprising your primary support system, your friends and your family. And you stop being able to trust in your ability to be safe in the world. And that leads to not being able to trust in yourself. And because one of the symptoms of mold illness can be just a profound sense of disconnection from yourself and from anything meaningful, you live in this very narrow space where your experience is incredibly limited, and it's very isolating to be there.
That's absolutely horrifying. And I know that in a lot of chronic illnesses, there's a lot of disbelief from physicians and primary care people because of, their lack of understanding. So this is, it's incredibly sad to hear. So if you don't see it, if you don't smell it, how do you know that it's contributing to your chronic illness?
You wouldn't. And you wouldn't. And that's why I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be speaking about this, because one of the things I commonly hear people say is, well, I don't smell anything and there's no visible mold, so I don't think that's something that I'm dealing with. I don't think that's relevant for me. And I thought the same thing. Mold was the last thing on my laundry list of what I thought was going on with me that I investigated, because it seemed like such a random and rare issue that I just assumed was not involved. And so that's why it's so important to to test and to know what's happening with your space, especially if you live in an older building or work in an older building, or you know that there's a history of water damage. These are really important things to just check in on, the way that you would get an annual physical. Check in on the health of your home and make sure that your home isn't sick.
So what should you do if you suspect you might have a mold problem? Is there a way to test your body for mold?
Yes. So just like you can test your home and see what's going on there, you can also test your body for mycotoxins. There are two different labs that people commonly use, Great Plains Laboratory and Real Time Labs, and they both offer urine mycotoxin tests that they'll ship to your home, and people can do these tests themselves, and then they send them back to the lab for analysis. And that will tell you what type of mycotoxins you're being exposed to. So then you can take that information and compare it to what you found is going on in your living space, and sort of just get more information about, okay, what's going on? Because it's also possible to carry mycotoxins from one space to another. So you may live in a home right now that doesn't have a mold problem, but you might have carried mold from another space that you've lived in, especially if you have this genetic susceptibility. And so that's another thing people don't think about, that is really important. And the last piece that I'll speak to about this is when you do have the mycotoxin testing to see what's happening in your body, that's really important to know specifically which toxins you're dealing with, because when it comes to treatment, there are certain kinds of binders that are specifically able to bind to different mycotoxins. And so when people go and seek treatment, that is another huge obstacle, is that a lot of practitioners aren't aware of this targeted approach, and that one type of binder is completely ineffective for certain mycotoxins and very effective for another. So I just want to put that out there for anyone listening who is seeking treatment, and something to have on your radar.
So this is a serious illness that it isn't until recently that it was actually taken a little bit more seriously. In the past, it was like shrugged off, or we didn't have the resources to actually diagnose such a health problem. But it is very, very serious. And as you were saying, it can really take a toll on your health and really, really make your health deteriorate. This is something really, really interesting. And we're very grateful that you shared with us.
Thank you so much. Yes, Katie, there's so much information here that I learned, and I'm sure that our audience has now learned. And perhaps some of us are dealing with it and are not even aware, or would never even have thought to look into that as a possible causation for some of our symptoms. So thank you.
Well,
absolutely. Thank you.
Katie, this has been a lot of fun and all that. Unfortunately, we're run out of some time. We wish we had had a lot more time, but we do have an extended version of this interview that all of you folks can tune in on accessradio.ca every Saturday between noon and 3 p.m. And yes, even though you're in Albuquerque, you can still tune in.
I got away from the mold, and now I just have to worry about aliens.
That's right. That's right.
Well, one thing's for sure.
Similarity.
Hey, Katie, one thing's for sure. When you were born, they just broke the mold.
There
ain't another one like you.
I was waiting for a mold joke. I was waiting for one.
Great.
Thank you, Robert.
Hey, don't you think you just molded in well with this today?
She really did. Yeah. She really did. Thank you, Robert.
Well, thank you, Esther. Thank you, Jenny Duhame, for producing our show. Thank you, Katie, for being part of our broadcast today. And thank you to the audience. And a reminder that you can tune in to this show right after it's been broadcast. You can either go on the ESTHER'S Breeze YouTube channel, you can go onto the Bobby Short Shorts YouTube channel, or go back on my personal Robert D'Alessio Facebook page, and all your comments are welcome. Even though the show's over, you can still bring in the comments. If you have any questions, Katie will be obliged to answer.
I'm happy to answer.
So thank you to everyone. So we'll be seeing you next week, same time, same place. God bless and be good. Stay safe.
Ciao for now.
Bye now.